nice skin, so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Young Kreggers, forever fresh-faced, clean living. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. A dear friend of mine, really nice guy. Why you're going to find him interesting is because he works for Lebron James. He works for LeBron James. LeBron has a company you might not know called Uninterrupted. This is a top executive there. His name is Jimmy Spencer, and he's a big 49er Warriors fan, and I promised we'd talk about Bay Area sports. Hello, Jimmy.
Thank you. And San Francisco Giants, we could talk about 10 years ago. Probably don't want to talk too much about the current San Francisco Giants, but thank you.
We're going to get into the Willie Mays documentary that your company did. What is your job? What is your title, and what is your job at Uninterrupted, LeBron's company?
Yeah, my title continues to switch and change, but for the most part, what it is, I'm the SVP of talent partnerships over here. And what that means, I have the greatest job in the world. I meet with athletes and entertainers and comedians, and I try and figure out what it is they want to do creatively, which can be a little bit of anything. It could be the smallest. I want to showcase, the story of my last season with this team. I want to showcase, my family life. And then sometimes it could be a little bit more creative, a little fun. And that's my job. I'm the guy working with the athletes to tell their stories.
I like that. Hey, I like your microphone. It looks old school.
Yeah, it's a really old school microphone. I don't know if you know this, but there was an announcer back in the day who used to actually hold his microphone during the whole game. Do you know about that, Greg?
Ralph Lawler, LA Clippers. I told you that before we went on the air. So how well do you know LeBron?
I would say, I know him. I know him well. He's in my tenure too. If you go back before I started working with Maverick Carter and LeBron doing Uninterrupted, I was an NBA writer. So I was around the NBA. I was covering the Warriors. And so I was covering the league. I didn't know LeBron as well when I was covering the league. I think I interviewed him a couple times. I was like in that media scrum. And then obviously I've gotten to know him over the years, working with him, helping lead this thing. And I always tell people the same thing, by the way, because I get asked the question all the time. What's LeBron like? Do you like LeBron? What's LeBron like? It's the easiest answer. He's like you, Craig, a Midwest guy, a nice guy, funny guy, easygoing. And so I've been thankful to work with the Midwest.
My elbow is tucked. I was sitting with ESPN writer Dave McMenamin one night, and I said something about Rick Barry, one of the great Warriors of all time. And I had heard Rick say a couple of years ago, many years ago, maybe 10 or 12, only if LeBron would tuck his elbow on his shot and Dave was defending. And I like to critique jump shots. I like to, you know what I'm saying?
I have a quick question for you because this came up. We were watching Team USA with Halliburton.
Yeah.
And watching Halliburton shot. What is the ugliest, best shot you've ever seen?
It's a good question. Now, there are guys that have, there are guys that have, like Tim Hardaway had side spin and did not have a good shot, but he was a rhythm shooter, and he, so that he didn't have good form. Sean Marion shot it very low. There's a guy on the Timberwolves who's a rookie named Terrence Shannon Jr., left-handed scorer, and he shoots it really low release point. Halliburton, I know what you're saying. Jamal Wilkes had a weird shot, but you remember Jamal Wilkes? Was that before your time?
Yeah, it's before my time, but I'm a historian of the game. I think. Right. I don't know. I don't want to.
So are you saying it could be Halliburton, right? Is that what you're saying or what?
I think it might be Kevin Martin.
Who
had his time.
Okay, timeout.
Kings.
Now, but are we saying that's good form? It is. It definitely is unattractive, but it is a good release point or what?
It's a good question. I would say unattractive, funky is what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Funky looking shot. Like if you were to be playing 5-on-5 out somewhere, anywhere, on a court, outside, and someone shot that way, you'd be like, ooh.
If I was playing against somebody like that down at the Panhandle near Haight-Ashbury.
There you go.
You ever play there?
I played the dog patch. You play the
Okay.
dog patch in San Francisco? Steven Jackson has a basketball court
Oh,
that he built there.
oh,
And I actually texted him recently that his court is dilapidated and he needs to
oh,
go back and restore that court. It's slanted. And so if
oh.
you play there, you got to know if you're shooting from one side or the other,
Yeah,
you're going to have a little more on this side and a little
yeah.
less on that side.
So, how'd you get the job, by the way, with LeBron's company?
That's a great question. Big
And
mistake
I
by
should
them.
point out, I don't see color, I see character, but I think you're the only white boy at the company.
It's so the way I got the job was, like I said, I was an NBA writer. I was covering the Warriors Cavs first finals of the. People forget they played 4 in a row. How crazy is that? I feel like we don't talk about that enough.
What are you
that they
talking
played
about?
in four straight NBA finals, Warriors Cavs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Cavs. The Cavs were undermanned. It was kind of unfair with the Warriors, and yet they kind of blew a couple there, didn't they? They blew a couple or just one?
If you go, and sometimes it can be hard when that happens or all the finals run together, and you kind of start thinking of characters.
Yeah.
The first finals, you could make the argument, and I didn't at the time, but you could make the argument that LeBron was the MVP in a losing effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was saying that. Yeah.
It wasn't, and they gave it to Iguodala because I felt like they didn't really know who to give it to on the Warriors. And not that Iguodala didn't deserve it. He did. And I think they called him the LeBron stopper at times. But how could you call him the LeBron stopper when you looked at LeBron's numbers in that series? Were unbelievable. And I think I was wowed. I hadn't heard of this LeBron James character, but until that moment, I had not understood the Cavs had this star. But no, during that time, I had gotten close covering, of all people, Steph Curry, actually, when Steph Curry was a rookie. And I go back to give you a little bit of my Forrest Gump career. I was a high school basketball coach for 5 years, coaching up in Sacramento, California for 4 of those years. We had multiple, I want to say probably somewhere between 8 to 10 Division I players came out of those 4 years. We had 2 players who played professionally. One played with the Clippers on a 2-way contract. Ika Regbu played at Washington State. We had a lot of talent, a lot of coaching talent, or a lot of talent up there. And so I was big into coaching, and I had been around basketball and had been through a lot of things. I don't remember why I started talking about the fact that I was a coach. I think I just wanted to impress you a little bit.
It is. That's cool. So you're a basketball junkie.
Yeah, I knew ball. I did. And I loved coaching, by the way. Still the greatest time of my life was when I coached. And eventually I'll coach again. When my kids get a little older, I'll coach and figure it out. But I was very unsure of where my career was going to go because I thought maybe I want to be a coach and I want to teach. I was teaching high school English at St. Mary's High School, college high school in Berkeley. Coaching, I coached ball there 1 year, but I coached 4 years prior. We weren't very good in Berkeley at the time. But I had started covering the Warriors, and now I'm remembering why I started telling the story. There was a kid that I coached named Darren Johnson. This goes back like 2011, I want to say, around the time Steph Curry's rookie season. So whenever we go back, we could trace back. And Darren, and I tell this to him all the time, and so I have no problem saying it to you. He was one of these kids, excellent hooper. He was probably a 6'3", 6'4" freshman, could dunk as a freshman, combo guard, really talented player. And let's just say as a freshman in high school, the work ethic was lacking. He didn't really have a great work ethic. The mic and drill, I just remember a lazy moment where he was barely doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't yell at kids. I'm a player's coach, Craig. You know that. And I, you could probably tell, right? And I'm more of a Steve Kerr than I am a Thibodeau. So I pulled this kid out. I was yelling at him. I was lighting into him like I'd seen coaches do in movies, Coach Carter style. And I remember what he said to me. He's like, guys like Steph Curry don't have to work hard. And I thought, you have no idea. So I was, just so happens after he said that comment, Steph, who was a rookie at the time with the Warriors, was in Sacramento playing the Kings. And I mentioned it to Steph Curry in a post-game media thing as kind of a joke that, hey, I got this kid, blah, blah, blah. And Steph's reaction was, bring the kid to practice. And so I made the kid earn it. I made him work to get his grades. I wasn't just going to take him to go meet his hero. But this kid out of Davidson who looked younger than he did in high school, sat with him. I just remember the two of them sitting on these medicine balls at the Warriors practice facility. And Steph spent, 30, 45 minutes talking life into this kid, talking
Wow.
about how I wake up every morning, I shoot 500 shots. I've done it since I was a kid. I like the amount of work that I put in, and he said to him, I remember he said, do you know how many AAU players I've seen like you who don't make it because they don't work hard? And he lit a fire into that kid. That kid ended up working his tail off and got a scholarship to University of Washington. And
good for
one
him.
Of those kids who, one of those guys played professionally as well.
That's a feel-good story.
It's a feel-good story. Yes,
and
yes. So that's how I got to know Steph really well.
Who plucked you out of the media writing to work at? Is that Maverick that plucked you?
So, no, I had a good friend of mine, Sam Amick, who
I know that name.
Yeah, Sam, great writer. Him and I worked together at the Sacramento Bee 20 years ago. And he called me one day. I was walking in San Francisco, beautiful Golden Gate Bridge in the background, walking, truly wind blowing, could barely hear what Sam was telling me. And he said, hey, I got a call from a friend of his who said LeBron and Maverick are looking to start a media company, and they're looking for someone who's really great with athletes and understands content. And you're the first name that came out of my mouth because you'd had good relationships with players. And at that time had a moment with Steph Curry. We did an on-camera interview, and Steph at the time hadn't revealed whether or not he was going to re-sign with Golden State. It was still a couple years before his contract. And he told me, and you'll appreciate this, and you're professional. I asked him the question. I said, do you want to come back and have a long-term contract with the Warriors? And right as he's answering the question, which was yes, that he did, a jet flies over, cuts the audio. The audio guys couldn't hear. And so I had to ask Steph, hey, do you mind repeating that for me, please? And so I asked the question again. Luckily, he said it again. And it went, 10 minutes of breaking news for the day. It went out and it did its thing on ESPN, Bottom Line or whatever. And that later that day, it was kind of, I think, when Sam had been asked that question. So he was thinking, oh, here's a guy that is able to get a lot out of Steph. And so I flew down to LA, Bay Area kid, lived most of my life in Northern California, except a little stint in Connecticut with NBC Sports. And I flew down to LA, and of all places, I interviewed at Jimmy Iovine's house in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And I'm walking in. I don't come from, even though I grew up in Marin County, maybe the wealthiest county in the world, I don't come from wealth personally. So I had never seen hallways this long or statues in a backyard before. And so I met with Maverick in that backyard, and Mav's a great guy. And back then, you got to remember too, Maverick was probably 33, 34 years old, still really young. He's still young, but relatively young. And I was the same age, just a year younger than him. And I think we hit it off, and we told some stories. We talked about what this thing could be. And, 2 weeks later, I flew back down to LA. He offered me the role, and that was 9 years ago.
9 years. Let me ask you two questions about growing up. I haven't heard you talk about Jimmy Spencer, the ball player, the high school ball player. And also, I always tell people my childhood was comedy and basketball, but intertwined with the comedy was writing and reading. And I always like to tell people there was this British journalist named Alistair Cook, and he said on the air, he had a show, and he said, I heard the best American writers write for Sports Illustrated. And he was talking about David Halberstam and Curry Kirkpatrick and Frank DeFord. So my question to you is, were you in love with writing is the first question. And then I'll follow up with what kind of ball player you were. Let's start with writing.
Yes. It kind of it all actually plays together. So I, as a kid, I made my own newspapers on a little computer program we had upstairs. And I can still remember like fake headlines I'd write about Ricky Henderson. And I was into sports. My grandfather was really the one who got me into sports. After my parents divorced when I was little, we lived with my grandparents, and he was the one that started taking me to go see Will Clark and Kevin Mitchell. And, I could remember my first game ever seeing sports was Will Clark came back from injury. People are pounding the bleachers as he comes to the plate. And I'm thinking as, a 5 or 6 year old, we get to be as loud as we want right now. This is amazing. And so I fell into love with sports there. I was always into the newspaper side, and I loved it. And I read, sports were my outlet. I love sports. I read the newspaper every morning. My stepdad would put the newspaper out when I was probably about 10, 11 years old. And the sporting section he'd always put out for me. And I grew up on Ray Ratto, who had a column for the San Francisco Chronicle, who I still believe is one of the best writers, comedy, sports, life that you could put together. And I got to grow up on him.
Is Scott Osler still up there? He used to be down here in LA.
He is.
Yeah, he's clever.
He is. He's also very good. They had him, Bruce Jenkins, Ray Ratto. They all, I mean, talk about a golden era for Bay Area sports. And those guys were great. And they had Tom Tolbert, who did the radio up there, and Ralph Barbieri, who was they were co-host up there. They were all fantastic. In fact, I can remember in college when I started getting into this, I wrote an email to Ralph Barbieri, who has since passed away. And he was so kind and generous with his time and called me back and talked to me about the career and this and that. And I had other people who I can remember, Bob Fitzgerald, who's now the play-by-play guy for the Warriors. I think I emailed him when I was like in maybe 8th grade or 9th grade. And his response was, "You don't want to get into this business, kid. It's too hard."
Yeah.
And that was it. It wasn't very encouraging. And so I thought about calling him up. Maybe he'll hear this podcast. But Bob, I made it, man. I made it.
Jimmy
despite your warnings.
Can I tell you, I got to tell you quick before we get to your, I'm saying over-under on your senior year as a ball player, 13 points a game. Okay, but we're not there yet. This is a weird tangent. You mentioned Will Clark, and great player, the natural, and San Francisco Giants. So I'm doing sports in the Bay Area, not in the Bay Area, down at the Central Coast in Monterey, but we cover Bay Area sports. So I'm down in Salinas, Santa Cruz,
also one
Monterey.
of the most beautiful places you can ever go.
And there's this event where they're going to go clay pigeon shooting, and and one of the local restaurants, he knows Will Clark, and they're gonna have a big brisket for everybody. And the guy who's running it said, "Hey, Craig, cover this, man. Cover this for the local news, local sports. Will Clark's going to be here." This is just one of those funny little weird things that probably doesn't translate. But I went up to Will Clark at some point when I thought it was a break, where I think before they were done doing their shooting and the clay pigeons, and they were going to go in and eat. At some point earlier in the day, I said, "Hey, I'd like to interview you if possible." He goes, "Yeah, that's no problem." And then he's in line now to get food. This is like an hour or so later, and I have to go back to the station, so I can't interview him. So in my head, I go, well, I want to be responsible. He might not even remember I asked him, but I go up to him in line. I said, "Hey, I got to run. I won't be able to." He goes, "I said I'd do it later." You know, he kind of snapped a little bit, but I should have just left and not done anything. But you know those moments, and it also
like Irish exit.
Yeah, it's also a thing I do with parties where I instead of saying goodbye if I'm going to leave early to the host, you just slip out, and then they don't know if
you don't want to make them feel bad.
Exactly. Your thoughts on this tangential story?
Well, one, I met Will Clark, a friend of mine, Hunter Pence, who he played for the Giants, had it's kind of their version of a jersey retirement. They put a plaque on the wall outside of the stadium up there in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And at that celebration of his, beforehand, they had a little cocktail hour, and Will Clark was there. And I thought, look, this is the guy who this is Will Clark. Like, this is my first favorite player.
Yeah.
I got to go up to him, shake his hand. And he was very nice, but he also could not care less.
Yeah, exactly. But
he was like, I don't know how many guys your age have come up to me and said the exact same thing. What do I say to you?
Right.
And I totally understand his piece of it. But yeah, I grew up with a lot of legends. Ricky Henderson, Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds. I mean, you talk Deion Sanders played for the Niners and the Giants. I had a glorious middle school to high school era. I want to say, so when it came to writing, by the way, can I speak to the young kids?
Yes.
Your young audience? I was a terrible writer, and I failed English, high school English, when I was a sophomore. I had to go to summer school for it. Now, it had a little less to do with my inability to grasp the English language or read, but I didn't have, and I think my parents would be okay with me saying this, there was not like a lot of encouraging me to read. The newspaper was pretty much it. I read the newspaper. I wasn't reading books. So you throw a book at a kid who's used to reading Ray Ratto's 650 word column. Yeah. I'm not reading Shakespeare. I'm not reading these things. Plus, I had terrible anxiety as a kid. Right around 12 years old, I couldn't sit in class. I felt like if I was going to sit in class, I was terrified I was going to throw up. I was like the room was shrinking on me. I had really bad anxiety. And back then, I remember I would stop going to class. My mom was like fed up leaving her job at Birkenstock Sandals, which she just retired last year.
Congratulations.
But Yes, thank you. She would leave her job to come pick me up. And I remember her being like, I can't keep leaving work to pick you up from school when you're saying you're sick. I'm going to have to take you to see a therapist. And I was like, whoa. We can't do that. So I kind of got it in check. I figured it out. But then around sophomore year of high school, it reared its ugly head again. And I couldn't sit in my English class. Was this like, for whatever reason, that class felt claustrophobic to me. And I couldn't sit in that class. And I hated it. And I had, it wasn't just English. I had at the progress report, that first report card they send your parents.
Yeah.
I had a 0.5 GPA, 3 Fs, 3 Ds, because I wasn't going to class and I wasn't showing up. And the only thing, now this comes back to basketball, I got put on academic probation for basketball. And so they were threatening to take away basketball. At that point, you could get like 1 academic probation and keep playing. But if you got a second, you were off the team. And there was another guy on my team who got kicked off the team because he didn't make it. And I did not want that to be me because I love basketball so much that basketball really helped me pull it together and figure out and push through high school. And, luckily I my grades were never great. I got just enough to where Sacramento State was like, sure, why not? We'll let you in. But I was not, there was no other colleges that were going to let me in. And I didn't fall in love with sports writing until I was at a cake party my sophomore year of high school. And I was arguing sports with the guy that happened to be the sports editor for the newspaper. And he's like, oh, if you think you're so smart, why don't you write about it? So I wrote a column and it got a lot of response on, back then it would run. We had at Sacramento State, a really good newspaper, and it came out weekly and the circulation was about 30,000.
Wow.
And people read that newspaper.
Yeah.
And I felt like a celebrity overnight. I wrote that. People were coming up to me. Hey, I read your column. And I was hooked at that moment. I was hooked on media. I think ego more than anything. Hooked.
Right. Was it well written? Did you feel good about how you wrote it?
At the time, I felt like it was. I haven't really looked back. I'm sure they all live out there. I'd be terrified to see. I think I had a line one time that no one scored more than Derek Jeter. And I'm not talking about baseball. That was one of my lines as a columnist. And so I'm worried about what else I could have written. So I don't look at those old things.
Right.
But all that said, I think I actually found my niche. To this day, I feel I am a good writer. If I write from myself, I'm a good writer. And I became buried in all this. Remember, I became an English teacher for 2 years at a private school.
Wow.
Teaching
At a private school. Wow.
Yeah. And so I believe I was a good teacher.
Yeah. Some people are late bloomers. Maybe you're a late bloomer.
I think it was, and this goes to everybody though, my anxiety held me back from being able to succeed in school. And I think whether it's our mental health, our physical health, whatever it is, think of all the people who could be great and haven't been because what's held them back. And I was on the cusp of that, and I'm lucky.
And for the people listening who have anxiety, one of Jimmy's medicinal healers is bourbon. He'll be the first to tell you that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that alcohol gets a bad reputation. I'm drinking it right now just to make it through the show. I mean, there's
okay. So, ball player, because I haven't really. How tall are you?
6'3". I'm not Craig Kilborn height, but I'm close.
Right.
I have very long arms. Now, I want you to take what I told you, and you describe what kind of player you think I was. And then
I like to do this with people. Because I see guys that play, and I have a guess on what they can do. And
skinny and long.
So, Brent Barry, you're built like Brent Barry. Who
Rick
has
Barry, great guy.
Brent Barry is a great guy, very funny.
No, Rick Barry. I'm talking about Rick. Rick.
I know. I was talking about but Brent is he's clever. He was on NBA TV for a while. Okay, and he has long arms. Right. He has a set shot. There are guys in the NBA that have set shots, and he had a set shot. But that's all good. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let's see. You could handle. You're a defensive player. You weren't a sharpshooter. A lot of guys aren't. Like I was a sharpshooter, and I could pass.
Yeah.
So 6'3", but you probably had to play forward in high school, right?
Yeah. More that 3-4 position, but skinny. Yeah. I mean, you got to. It's interesting. My wife and I joke about this a lot because I've always thought I'm skinny. I think maybe I have body image issues.
Yeah.
To go with my anxiety. But there was a time, Craig, where I stepped on a scale a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I was actually overweight, but I still thought I was skinny. And so now I tell this story. I'm skinny, but I'm nervous that when I tell that, people are looking at me like, you're not. You're actually maybe need to lose some weight.
Oh, wow.
But you saw me recently. Did I look good?
I have to. Well, I was gonna. You have to take your shirt off, and we didn't want to do that at the restaurant. But I will say, and this has been said
It's a nice
before, there are
restaurant.
slender guys with fat pockets, so you can be slender and still have a little roll or a little back fat. You know, that's how that life.
True.
That's
They
how
call that
life
skinny
works.
fat.
Yeah, especially if you're
skinny fat.
sedentary and sitting in a club chair all day. What'd you average as a
Yes.
senior in high school, and who did you play like?
So if you were to my senior year, my junior year and senior year are very different years. My senior year, my coach came up to me, and you know when you're doing like they call it like Hell Week, basically, where you start doing conditioning drills.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of conditioning, and our coach, Lance Phillips, was his name. He was a painter as well as our basketball coach, and was one of the all-time leading scorers in Marin County basketball history. I'm Marin Catholic himself, where Jared Goff went to school. And he told me, and I think he meant it as a compliment, Jimmy, you're a great defender. We're going to make you a defensive star.
That's what I am.
And I'll never forget and I hope that this finds its way to Lance Phillips, who's a great guy, and I really like him. Even though I think my final senior year was his last year coaching at that high school, but he told me we're going to make you a defensive player, and he did. And I was a great defensive player, Greg. You put me on a guy. I was long, I was fast, and my height was good, so I could guard guards really well.
Stacey Augman couldn't shoot. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was very, very clearly couldn't shoot, by the way.
I haven't gotten to that yet. Can you shoot or not?
No, terrible shot to this day. I had one year where I think around 2004, I was a great shooter, and it went away. By the way, I did talk to Karl-Anthony Towns about what you said about
I want to talk about Cat.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we want to get into Cat.
We got a lot to talk about here.
So what did you average?
This story quickly.
What did you? Okay, go ahead.
Well, so we're playing this school, Petaluma, San Marin versus Petaluma High, it was in Napa School, Justin Siena High School, and they had a great shooter. Halverson was his last name, and he was going off for 30 points a game. He was a 30-point per game high school shooter in Marin County, and in Marin County Athletic League where they played. And anyway, I had him shut down in the first half, Greg. This is the opening game of the season. I had him shut down. He might have scored 3 points. I was face guarding him the whole time. It was like not a true box in one, but I was face guarding him. Nothing. I had the ball, started the third quarter. I tried to make a pass to one of our bigs in traffic. It was a turnover. My coach, Lance Phillips, screams, "You're not an offensive player," in front of the whole gym, my friends, everybody, and pulled me out of the game. I didn't play the rest of the game. They beat us. Halverson ended up going for 30, and I'll never forget it. And that was the story of the season in many ways. It was a lot of back and forth. So when you say how many points I averaged, less than 5 points a game. I barely touched the ball offensively. And if I did, my minutes were gone. So we played a very and by the way, I think we went 2-11 in league that year. Our best player got hurt. It was a terrible year.
I want to be very compassionate right now because I feel bad for you. I want you to take another swig of that bourbon. There you go. You're going to be okay.
It's feeling better.
You're going to
Yeah,
be okay. I always like these guys that are athletic. But they don't have the offensive skill. I started playing basketball in second grade. My dad put a hoop up, and I was addicted. And I worked. He showed me how to shoot a layup. It came naturally to me. Left leg, right knee up, right hand up, layup. And then I worked on the jump shot. And I actually had a little jump shot in fifth grade. Now, it's hard to get it up there. So I shot it a little bit over here. And then I finally worked on it. And I became what we call a pure shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do my form. I'd be at church and I'd be with my mom and I'd just be doing this imaginary ball, doing the form.
And they thought you were raising your hands, praising God. Instead,
speaking in tongues.
Perfect. Yeah. Speaking in sets.
Anyway, well, that's interesting. I've known you a while. I thought you might be a little troubled. I'm kidding when I say that. Okay, so what were we going to go to next? I think I want to go to Cat. And then I want to go. I have so many notes here. I'm trying to stay organized.
Yes, do your best. I think everyone's just going to enjoy the nature of this relaxing Friday show.
It airs next Tuesday. Recording on a Friday.
Relaxing Tuesday show.
Excuse me. So Karl-Anthony Towns is one of my favorite players. He's somewhat polarizing for different reasons. So I got a text from Jimmy Spencer, my guest today, about a week ago, and he says, I'm with Cat right now. And then I love Cat, and I want to build up his confidence. And I told him how great I sent it to you, and you said, can I show this to him? And of course, I wrote it so you would. So why were you with Cat, and how did that go, and how did my name come up?
So, in all the projects we do, one, Cat did something for us, and I can say this part because this part's already been published. He was part of this Gatorade Player of the Year project we did. But then we also did a different project with him that's to be announced the following week. So we were working on a project, and he shows up, and I'd actually never met him before. I'd say a lot of the NBA players at this point I've met, we've worked with at some point. I know him somewhat or some capacity, but him I had never met. I'd only seen him through interviews, TV, you talking about him, and couldn't be a more fun, unique guy. I mean, we got into
very unique. Yeah.
Book recommendations. He's got a library. I showed him, we were sitting in a library, and I said to him, you need one of these in your house. This is a beautiful library. And he goes, I got one. Let me show you the picture. Yeah. And he gave me some book recommendations. We traded back. Great guy. But I said, because how could I not mention, he's an old soul, by the way. He's not I joke that, I'm the godfather of the millennial. I think generationally, I'm the first millennial. Yeah. And I told him he's more of a millennial than he is this Gen Z type guy. He's more of a millennial. And I think because he has an older sister, he said that's probably why. But I told him about you, and I said a lot of people, because you said this to me, 40 and above really understand your humor. Under 40, they might not know your humor as well. They don't get it.
Or know me at all. Yes.
Well, they're going to know you after this. And so you text me, I'm trying to pull up the text here, but I had said, hey, I'm with Kat. And then you had texted me a nice note. Can I read it on the air here?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said, you love Kat. I love Kat. You mentioned his field goal percentages.
Yeah, I said the best game ever was the Game 7 in Denver. I've followed the Wolves since '89. I love Cat. I love field goal percentage. He shot 54% his first 3 years. In that Game 7, Cat, or I thought I was writing it to him, kind of.
Yeah.
You were an offensive force, and you D'd up the Joker. Because, people make fun of Cat with his defense, and he reaches and he fouls. He guards Joker better than anybody. Rudy can't guard him. Nas can't guard him, although Nas did better in the playoffs. Interesting, slow-mo, Kyle Anderson, who I love, he could guard Luka, but couldn't guard the Joker. So Cat, because of his size and quickness, is able to actually slow down Joker a little bit better than anybody on the Wolves. Yeah, and you read it to him.
I read it to him, and I think he remembered meeting you at a practice or whatnot, and he claimed that he.
That's
really?
Yeah, I don't think so. That's okay.
Okay, well, he pretended really well. He's quite an actor.
Yeah.
But he definitely knew who you were, because when I showed him the picture, he was said like, oh, da. So he knows who you are. And but anyway, he said, those first 2 years, I think he said he didn't shoot as many threes those first couple years.
Correct.
And so
he was also posting up a lot. He has an automatic jump hook, but he doesn't post up as much. I think because he just gets double teamed. Go ahead.
Well, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What is the stat that you say is the greatest indicator of a great basketball player, offensive player?
Well, I like field goal percentage.
We actually have a text thread called field goal percentage.
You have what?
We have a text thread. You, me, and a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Armando Gonzalez.
Oh, that's right.
A field goal percentage text thread.
Yeah. So it was cool. Yeah, Cat's a good guy. He's very gifted offensively, and we'll see how the Wolves do. Their bench is different. They lost Monte Morris, who didn't play much, but he was good. They lost Jordan McLaughlin, who went to Sacramento. They lost Slow-Mo, who went to the Warriors. Love Slow-Mo. And we added a couple rookies. TJ, is that his name? TJ? They call him Shannon. The
It's hard to
guard,
keep track.
Terrence Shannon Jr., they call him TJ, and Rob Dillingham. And we added Joe Ingles. I don't know if he has anything left at age 37.
Mm.
Joe Ingles.
You must like Joe Ingles, right?
Yeah.
3-and-D guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
formerly 3-and-D guy.
So,
Was that
so
was that your game?
yeah, I was more like
Without
Pistol
the D?
Pete. I could really, really, really pass, which I got a kick out of, and I could shoot and all that kind of stuff. I joked that the defensive stance hurt my lower back just to make everyone feel good who didn't play me. I should have played more, but that's okay. So let me ask you quickly, Warriors, I'm going to go to 49ers. They're in transition, the Warriors. Will they make the playoffs this coming season? And how is it for you as a Warriors fan, as they dominated for a while and now they're declining?
Yeah. So, the history going back, you got to remember my Warriors memories as a kid is more Latrell Sprewell, PJ Carlissimo getting choked than it is Golden State championships, right?
Right.
This is I grew up in, I think, with one of the worst franchises in the league consistently. We were watching the draft more than we were ever watching the playoffs. And so when they got great, and by the way, they got great at the same time I started working with LeBron, which was just tough for me because that's 4 years in a row.
Oh, that's right.
I'll never forget. They win the championship, which I could enjoy that championship, that first one that they won because it was pure. I didn't work with LeBron. I didn't have that interest. Second year, they go to Game 7. I'm in attendance, and I have this photo I should send to you. So when Kyrie takes that shot, I'm sitting there. And I don't know what to feel because you have loyalty as a kid to your team. There's tribalism built into you, right? That is your team, your squad. It's a lifelong contract. Yet now here's this guy that I'm working with. And at the time, our team is very small. So I'm one of the few. And I'm thinking if he wins and they come back, that's not only is it great for him, it's great for business. It's great for my actual life where the Warriors thing doesn't actually do anything for me tangibly. So what do you think I felt when that shot went through the net? Kyrie's game winner, essentially.
Well, I think the childhood Warrior fan goes deeper than the professional. And so I think it was a killer, and you wanted the Warriors to win, and we can destroy this, and Maverick doesn't have to see this, and LeBron doesn't have to see this, but you were rooting for the Warriors, and you should be rooting for the Warriors. That's your team growing up.
Yeah. When that shot went in, I felt pain. I felt pain that we had lost. And literally about 15 minutes later, I was on the floor with Maverick holding LeBron's MVP trophy and took a picture and sent it to all my friends from the Bay Area. And I said, if you can't beat them, join them in the most literal sense that you've ever seen. And I think it all shook out well. The Warriors ended up winning 3 out of 4. Kevin Durant came. They won a couple after that. Then they went on to win that Celtics finals. So I had my share of Warriors. But to answer your question, now that they're going the other way, I think I'm just a little detached. I'm detached because I said this to a group at dinner. We were at dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I think I got some booze at the table, even though there's a very small group. That it's let Steph Curry go. If you can't win, I would rather see Steph Curry participate in something meaningful somewhere. I know that's not a popular take, but let him go.
Okay, I do that. Now, I didn't grow up with the team in Minnesota, so I was an NBA fan. Before the Wolves came into existence in 89, I was a Dr. J fan. So when Kevin Garnett's there, he's an MVP. We're making the playoffs. He's not going to win a championship. Let him go. And I said to somebody, I think I said to Jimmy Jam, I said, I'm a bigger Garnett fan than Wolves fan. I'm a Wolves fan. Let him go to Boston. I can't believe he won a championship. It changes your whole career. Dr. J won one NBA championship, changed his whole career, won a few in the ABA. So what I do is I root for Ricky Rubio when he left the Wolves. I'm happy Kevin Love won a championship. When guys leave, I root for them, except for Stephon Marbury I didn't like. But the other guys that left the Wolves, I root for them. I'm a basketball fan first, a Wolves fan second. If that makes any sense.
It makes a ton of sense because here's my thought. There's 2 guys on the Warriors right now who I will tell you that I just adore and I'm a huge fan. Steph Curry, for all the reasons I said earlier about who he is and what he's done for this franchise. And the other is Draymond Green.
I hate Draymond. I have a bullet point here. I want to ask you how much you detest him. But go ahead. Before I ask you how much you loathe Draymond, I'll let you finish your sentence.
Draymond, I love Draymond. And I'll tell you why I love Draymond. I love Draymond because I've known Draymond since he was from the beginning of his NBA career. I was covering the Warriors, and he was the best quote in the locker room as a rookie. He was a true leader out of the gate. He was the best.
Because he's a loudmouth and he's talkative, or what?
Well, early on, you got to think they weren't great yet when Draymond got there. They were on the come up, right? And I think anybody who's played sports and team sports, there's got different personalities on the team. And then I got to ask the question, does Draymond make the Warriors better based on his personality, right? Based on how he pushes, what he thinks? And I can tell you the answer is yes. And the reason why I can tell you the answer is yes is because Draymond is a teammate of ours. Draymond was one of the original Uninterrupted athletes and a partner in Uninterrupted. And so I've worked with Draymond on his first podcast. I worked with Draymond on a show we did, Throwing Bones. We did trophies where we followed Draymond and LeBron through the playoffs, a follow doc.
Yeah.
And Draymond is the best partner you can have, even though he'll push you at times to make it better. He wants to do this. And so I can see I've actually got to feel what it's like to be his teammate on the entertainment side. And he's a hell of a teammate.
Well, we should point out to the listeners and the viewers that Jimmy Spencer loves Draymond Green, and Jimmy Spencer's second favorite player in the NBA is Dylan Brooks. So we just need to point that out.
Hey, you know the difference between those two? Championships.
One's an all-star. Yeah. No, well, I will tell you something funny about Draymond.
Yeah.
So I know basketball a little bit, but my late father, loved Draymond at Michigan State. He says, you got to see this guy. And I saw Draymond, and I love guys that can pass. And defensively, these guys that disrupt on defense are just invaluable. And he is great. All I'm saying is, and everyone knows this, he goes too far. Why not choke Rudy for 3 seconds instead of 30 seconds?
Oh,
let's work on that. I want to help you, Draymond. Choke Rudy for 3, not for 30. Choke him.
You know what? I think if you and Draymond had a meal together, it would be probably the greatest. If we could actually just record that conversation, that might be the greatest content Uninterrupted can do. But you have to say these things to him because he'll like it. He'll appreciate it. He'll go back. A lot of guys would get sensitive. He's not one of those guys. But I root for those two guys. I would send Draymond to LA, send Steph to. That's the hard part, though. I haven't found the team that I would want Steph to go to. Right. Because I think I'd be jealous. I don't want their fan base getting that.
He'd be a good Celtic. He'd be a good Celtic.
See, I don't like that. I can't imagine him in any jersey. Maybe like Miami is far enough away.
Okay. How's Clay going to do in Dallas?
I think he's probably going to do just what he did last year. Okay. How's Dallas going to do? That's a better question. How's Dallas going to do?
They spanked the Timberwolves. We weren't ready for them. We were exhaling.
What was that, by the way? I was in Paris. I was eating croissants and all that was happening.
Yeah. Putting on those extra pounds on your slender frame.
Yeah.
I think they were a little stunned and after they beat Denver, the best team in basketball, Game 7 on the road, and they exhaled and they weren't quite ready. They just weren't ready. Anyway, let me ask you this. Let's keep it moving because we got a lot to do. And I don't have that much time left because I got a big power meeting today.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. I want to ask you, so when we first met a few years ago, it was in the afternoon. And I said, I think you may have had a drink at lunch, but maybe not. But anyway, I said, have you ever been to Musso and Frank? Because your office is over there in Hollywood. And we walked to Musso and Frank. But
was this our lunch with Maverick or was this our...
This was before that. This was the
first meeting. That's right.
So we walked over. It must have been 5 because that's when the thing opens, I think. Anyway, we go and we sit at the bar. We have a drink, and you're old school. They filmed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood there a few years later. Musso and Frank, great historic restaurant. And this was before, tragically, Kobe Bryant passed away. So I'm very obviously it's terrible. God bless him. But prior to that, I'm not the biggest Kobe Bryant fan. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. But I have a problem with his shot selection, and people are seduced by his fire, his competitiveness. They're seduced by that, and I think they're missing a few things. And I said to the bartender, I used to ask people this before Kobe passed, who's better, LeBron or Kobe? And the guy said Kobe. I said, no, it's actually LeBron. And then he pulled my martini away, the bartender, jokingly, because I said the wrong thing. So there is a worship of Kobe Bryant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because we have our friend Dave McMenamin, who does admit that LeBron is better than Kobe, but he asked me, because he was looking for some kind of victory, who's better, Tim Duncan or Kobe? And I said Duncan, because Duncan is fundamentally sound, best power forward of all time, and not as flawed as Kobe. Why do you think people worship Kobe and like him more than LeBron and more than Duncan?
Because we are, as humans, in love with storytelling, and facts and stats aren't as interesting as stories. And there's far better Kobe Bryant stories than there are Tim Duncan stories. And I think that is the short of it. If you look at, we had a big argument at work a few days ago, by the way, because we were watching the Olympics. Someone said on our team, he said that Steph Curry was the third best player of all time. And that caused a large uproar, as you can imagine.
I don't have him in my top 10, but
yeah,
maybe
I think a lot
I'm
of
wrong.
people probably put him somewhere in that like
10 to 15?
20.
Yeah, 10 to 20.
That range.
Yeah.
And you can make a case that he's the best shooter of all time.
Sure.
I think you could definitely make that case. But and as much of a Steph fan as I am, so I think people, where we go is, I think number one is Jordan. Number two is LeBron. You could flip flop. People in our
I sometimes say 1A. I go 1A Jordan, 1B LeBron. I do that.
Yeah. And LeBron's making a case more and more that he could be number one. But I think what we can all agree upon is 1 and 2 are LeBron and Jordan. In the top 2, they take those spots. The third is where it gets a little confusing now. You start to say, is it Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? And then there's a generational thing. People who didn't really see Larry play, who definitely didn't see a Wilt Chamberlain play. I've always said, when people go for the Tim Duncan, Kobe conversation, I quickly insert Shaquille O'Neal. And I say, I have Shaq above Kobe. Shaq won. They won 3 titles together. Shaq was the MVP all 3 finals.
Exactly.
All 3. And he was
exactly.
And so how could you have Kobe above him when Shaq was the most dominant player we've seen? I think Shaq doesn't get enough credit because people feel like he wasn't passionate enough about the game. Maybe the longevity wasn't there. Maybe the way he trailed off. But when then you go back to Tim Duncan now, and you just look at the numbers, the championships, the finals MVPs, what he meant, you got to give it to Duncan. And I know people hate that because the stories are better around Kobe, but you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'll say is
Jimmy Spencer on Twitter.
What's that?
I said at Jimmy Spencer on Twitter. You can tweet me there to argue, and I'll go back and forth.
Obviously, the age group, people didn't see, the players, but this is an easy one. And I know Jimmy Kimmel, late night host, who's a big Laker fan, he says it, and he's totally correct. They say, who's the greatest Laker of all time? And a lot, the young people are going to say Kobe. And I think Kobe, I don't know where he is on the list. He's not one. So Magic is one. That's what Jimmy says. And I say Magic. Kareem is probably 2. Or I guess you got LeBron. See, that's the problem is you got guys like Chamberlain that came there and LeBron that came there. But
I think you take their time with the franchise.
Yeah. Magic is the greatest Laker of all time. And my starting 5 of all time, this is tricky, but I'll tell you what my starting 5 is. It's Michael, Magic, Larry.
Magic at the 1.
Yeah. Larry and LeBron at the forward. So I'm pushing Duncan off. I'm putting Larry at the power forward and then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, Kareem as your center.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider Hakeem Olajuwon in there for what he brings defensively?
He might be in the top 5. He might be in the top. You have Kareem, Wilt, Bill Russell. People don't know. They look at the stats and they don't know how good Bill Russell was because they look at his stats. They go, he couldn't score. He dominated the boards and he altered shots. He, like, whatever you think Draymond or Dennis Rodman did, he did it even more.
If you could replace the shooting guard with Jordan, like say Jordan couldn't be part of it, like back in the old NBA live days where Jordan wasn't in the game, you couldn't have Michael Jordan at the 2.
Yeah.
You could move, if you wanted, you could move Magic to the 2 or you could move him to the 3. Or who would you replace him with?
You mean Anthony Edwards? You mean Anthony Edwards? No, just kidding. I tell you.
Who would you put in that spot?
I don't know. You want me to
put Steph Curry or Kobe? Would you put
Oh.
Would you put Steph in there? Would you put Oscar Robertson? Like, who would you put
Well,
in
I
that
do
spot?
have, interestingly, when people say you don't have Kobe in your top 10, I just tell them I have they called him pound for pound, the best player in the 60s was Oscar Robertson. So I do have Oscar in my top 10. And I think I did have Shaq in my top 10. But anyway, let me just tell you, I want to wrap up the Kobe thing. I think it's his competitive nature, his killer instinct. That's what seduces the fans. And what he would do is he's double teamed on the perimeter. And Phil Jackson said to him, he watched tape. Phil wrote about this in his book. What are you thinking here? You're double. Pau Gasol is wide open. And he goes, this is what gets my juices going. Beating a double team, beating a triple team. And then the audience is like, the crowd is like, he's unbelievable. He just made a shot falling down with 3 guys on him. And it's like, just move the ball, man. So that's
the basketball purist in you is thinking, yeah, but what percentage are you making of those shots, right?
Did you ever hear the story? I swear to God, I heard Phil say this. Phil Jackson said, in high school, Kobe would sabotage games. He'd get down by 20, so then he could go off and have a miraculous comeback and just shoot all these crazy shots and win. Did you ever hear that or not?
I'd never heard that, but talk about an entertainer. That's the other part of the game. The basketball coach, when I was coaching high school, you could only shoot. It was a very clear rule, and I would actually bench you, going back to the story about my coach, but I would bench you if you didn't do it. Catch and shoot threes or layups. That was the only offense we had. And we ran a dribble drive offense, and it was catch and shoot threes or layups. And if you got stopped on the drive, you jump stop and kick. Jump stop, kick until it was an open catch and shoot three. And I think I was early on that at the high school level. Players used to hate it, but as a defensive coach, so I can appreciate what you're talking about, because if anyone even took a mid-range jumper, I pulled.
Yeah.
That was the lowest percentage shot in high school.
Quickly, I'm just going to make 2 more basketball observations. I love passing the Spurs team that beat LeBron and D Wade and Bosh after they blew it the year before when Ray Allen hit the shot. That team could pass, and the Sacramento Kings team that did not beat the Lakers, even though I preferred them and thought they were better. Thank you, David Stern, for that debacle.
Yeah, they were a better team.
I love that passing. I love in the half-court offense when you can get a layup, when your guards can get a layup, and they would do the backdoor cuts. Yes. We have to keep it moving. I promised you 49ers. 49ers are a great team right now. People, I think, unfairly were criticizing Coach Shanahan last year after the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is a stud. He's better than Brock Purdy. The Niners are great. Go ahead.
So quickly, ask me who my favorite player on the 49ers is.
Who is...
Just because I don't want to just say it on my own. I want you to
Who is your favorite player on the 49ers besides Nick Bosa?
It's Kyle Shanahan.
Oh.
I am such a Kyle Shanahan fan. I would buy his jersey if they made one. And maybe I could do a custom one. This hat is essentially... I bought this hat because Kyle Shanahan wore this hat on the sidelines all last year.
Oh, wow.
And whatever hat he wears this year, I'm going to buy that hat, Greg, because this guy just totally changed our franchise. We had Harbaugh, who was great for us for a little while, and we almost... Remember, he played his brother in the Super Bowl. We lost that Super Bowl. Yeah. Colin Kaepernick just overthrew Michael Crabtree in the corner of the end zone, or else we would have won that Super Bowl. And then you know, fast forward, obviously we lost to Mahomes twice, and then you enter this year, and I'm kind of on this emotional journey again, where I'm like, eventually Kyle's going to break through, and it's going to be that much sweeter. You can't help but feel frustrated, but also the joy of watching this team. It's the best part of my life. I can't wait for football season.
Yeah, when I watch the Vikings for those 3 hours, and I've been watching them since 1972, maybe even 1970. But Chuck Foreman, I think, was a rookie in 72, 73. And it's 3 hours of exhilaration. They're now, how many games are there now? There's 17 games now, or 18?
Yeah,
17.
Yeah.
And it's intense. Now, here's my thought on Kyle Shanahan. This is what I love about him. He runs the ball. When you run the ball, you demoralize the defense. You take their soul if you can just cram it down their throats. The interesting thing is, a couple years back, I was a Mike Zimmer fan because he used to sleep at the office. He took his job seriously. And we played the
Will Clark
Niners.
of football.
What's that? Yeah.
He kind of looked like Will Clark, right?
Yeah. And we lost at the Niners, and it was close, but I remember this play where the Niners ran it to the right, and Eric Kendricks was being held, and he put up his arms like, "You're holding me," and they didn't call it. And after the game, Zim doesn't do this much. He says they're taught to hold, and they just assume the refs aren't going to call it. They'll get too tired to call it all the time. As a Niner fan, is that something that's come up before, that the offensive line will hold, but they don't think the refs will call it or catch it? Go ahead.
I would have to take a look at the film.
Okay,
Lord Kilby.
It's not talked about, though. It's not talked about on local radio
because a true fan base, the refs. When anything goes against you, it's because of the refs. When you're winning, no one's talking about the refs. And when we lost the Super Bowl, there's a lot of tape and recording of the Chiefs holding, right? If you look at kind of something.
Is that right?
So, yeah, the 49ers, we have our own little thing. You imagine the conspiracy theories that exist on the internet.
Yeah.
We got a whole fan base dedicated toward those things. And the hard part is for 49ers fans, one, agree with you on the run game. Kyle Shanahan, he's always ahead. No one takes his job more seriously. I don't know him, but I kind of don't want to know him. I like leaving him in this space that he's in. But for him, I hear he only wants to talk football. You could walk up to Kyle and say, "Hey, how are your kids doing?" He's like, "Oh, good. They just turned 12 and 13. But anyway, did I tell you about the zone defense that I saw the other day?" He'll just immediately go back to football, and that's what you need in your head coach.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. And so I'm excited about this season. This is the best time of year. Football season's coming back. I think we just signed Brandon Ayuk. It sounds like a long-term deal. We got a lot of fun stuff coming.
So as a Niner fan, because I'm an outsider to the Niners, I don't follow them I just think they're really good. In fact, 2 years ago, when we had a great winning record with Kevin O'Connell's first year, we lost a playoff game at home to the Giants, which we shouldn't have lost. You should never lose a home playoff game. But there was an exhale, because we were going to have to go play at the Niners the next week, and we were going to get killed. Anyway.
We've had some run-ins, right? Playoff run-ins, Vikings. You have the best. I mean, to me, you have the most exciting player in the NFL right now, not named Christian McCaffrey, who's Justin Jefferson.
TJ Hawkins. Oh, I thought it was TJ Hawkinson. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding.
Almost.
Jordan Addison.
Who's your quarterback now? Not to put you on the spot. Trivia. Who's your quarterback?
We're probably going to start the backup to Brock Purdy last year, Sam Darnold.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Good luck. You know who's a great kid? Josh Dobbs. I met him in the offseason. That's one of the smartest, most incredible guys.
He's old news. He's old news. I'll just tell you this. The Vikings are picked to finish last in the division behind Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago. But we might surprise people. Maybe not. We do have a very.
All of a sudden,
I'm going to give you a couple quick points. We have a very difficult schedule. The Bears have the third easiest schedule. We're not favored in our first 7 games.
Wow.
First game is at the Giants. That's winnable. Second game is at home to the 49ers. Now, here's what you need to know. I love Brian Flores, our defensive coordinator. We're improving our defense. We're improving our defense. We did draft a quarterback. We're all pausing for poise. We got him 10th. He's playing well. They're going to bring him along slowly. He's playing well right now in padded practice. J.J. McCarthy. He's playing well. Michigan. Okay? That's all you need to know.
You got a guy. You just need a guy. I'll end this because we don't have to talk 49ers much longer, since I forced you to have to talk NFL and 49ers here. It was one of my quick demands. But what I will say in closing, Brock Purdy, I think that everyone talks about, is Brock Purdy great? Is he not? Yeah. Is he an MVP? And to me, it doesn't matter. If the guy can win and he's the right guy in that position and he plays well with Shanahan, and I use it for all the young employees at the office that I really look to, I'm like, just go be Brock Purdy. Just do what I say. Go execute the offense, and we'll all be happy and win, and you'll get paid. And you just need a little more Brock Purdy in sports sometimes, guys that are willing to follow the offense.
Yeah.
And they got that right now.
Yeah, I mean, if he would have made the play on third down, they may win the Super Bowl, but they didn't. But Patrick Mahomes is the best in the game.
Listen, that play, and I think I know the play you're talking about, where the rush came through.
Yeah.
It was a missed block, and Ayuk was open in the end zone. The guy missed the assignment on the block. It's the most. You watch that over and over. I've watched it 100 times. It's devastating. I was at that game too.
It's bad coaching.
I was in Vegas. Most
bad.
You can say whatever you want about football players, but Shanahan will stay out of that mouth.
By the way, one of my favorite players of all time, and I probably top 3. I love Joe Montana. Love him.
Okay.
I love Peyton Manning. I like Dan Marino. I like Joe Montana. I like watching Aaron Rodgers throw the football. I just like talent, man.
Nothing
okay.
made my late grandfather, Russ Bohm, more upset than how the 49ers treated Joe Montana.
It's a tough business. We got to go quickly now. Top 5 movies. Can you go quickly on the top 5 movies? You got it?
Yeah, I wrote them down because you warned me. Number 5. You want me to start 5 to 1, right?
Well, most people don't do that. You can just do. You don't have to do an order, but if you have an order, I love it.
Okay. No, I'll do because it's hard to put it in order. I'm just going to get the 2 obvious ones out of the way.
Okay.
You have to mention, which is The Godfather. And I'm just putting I'm not going to say 1 or 2. I'm just putting The Godfather 1 and 2 together.
Okay.
Then I go Shawshank, which I think these are, if you were to poll 41-year-old men in the United States, these 2 are going to be in everyone's top 5, probably, if not top 10.
Yeah.
Then 3, I have a little bit of a sleeper that most people probably haven't heard of, which is About Time. And
don't know.
I can't even tell you the actors' names other than the older British actor who you might know. He was in Love Actually. He was like the singer in Love Actually. The main guy's a redhead. You might have to IMDb that later, fact check that.
Okay.
But About Time, Rachel McAdams is in that movie as the love interest. A young Margot Robbie.
Bill Nighy, who I love. I love Bill Nighy.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And there's a scene like father-son stuff is off the charts. I recommend everyone go watch that movie. It's incredible.
Oh, it's got a good rating. It's got a good rating. Okay.
Does it?
7.8.
Yeah, it's a sleeper. People haven't heard about it. It's very good. My comedy, Wedding Crashers. Wedding Crashers to me is still, most quoted, excellent.
Yeah.
And then I have to put a sports movie in there. And so for my sports movie, can I give out, since we go 5A, 5B on a sports movie, hold this slot?
Yeah, you seem like a good kid. You had a rough childhood. Go ahead.
I love 61 with that was the Billy Crystal film that they did for HBO with Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle. And it was a fantastic film. It kind of made me want to go into sports writing a little bit more because it was a good dynamic about how they covered that chase and how they were hard on Roger Maris. And it was a good and then just for fun, Major League, same thing. Major League to me is a hell of a movie that I came up on with Willie Mays Hayes. And I mean, 1 and 2. 2 was probably a terrible movie, but in my childhood, very quotable. I watched my son. We went to Rams training camp, and my son Samuel, who's 5, was wearing like the Willie Mays Hayes shades. Yeah. He was wearing a LeBron jersey, Lakers shorts, high Lakers socks, walking into training camp. And I couldn't help but think about when Willie Mays Hayes showed up to training camp in Major League 2. And so I put that as my top 5.
That's good. That's actually a very good list. I have friends that love Shawshank. Obviously, The Godfather is special. I'm now interested in seeing About Time, but that's a good list.
Please, and I would love to, if you're interested, I don't know if you like to watch movies alone or not, but I would come over and watch with you.
Oh, in my mahogany panel den. I'm in my mahogany panel
room
den.
that you're in right there, it would play great. I could bring a projector and play it for you if you don't have a TV in there. Happy to do that.
I have a 65 or 70-inch TV where I watch the Ant-Man.
You know exactly how big that TV is.
Something I used to know. I used to know this stuff. All right, we're going to finish up. Life Gorgeous quiz, simple questions, profound insights, very popular for Jimmy Spencer. First concert you ever went to. And Tower of Power is great. Were they from the Bay Area?
It was at the Sonoma County Fair. So whenever they were they weren't at their peak at that point, I'm assuming. Right. It was the Sonoma County Fair with my dad, Tower of Power. And my
Tower of Power. How old were you?
I must have been 6 or 7 years old.
What did they play? They had a lot of horns, right?
Ooh, a lot of horns. I couldn't tell you the song, but there was one song that I'm going to Spotify right after this, and I'm going to go find the song. I think it's like, what is this? What is something like that?
War. What is it good for?
It's
Absolutely
kind of
nothing.
like that. It's got that vibe, But they were good, and I thought I was a pretty cool kid at that point.
Favorite pie. I'm giving you some of my
Cherry.
classic questions because I haven't talked to you. You haven't been on before. What did you just say? Cherry?
Cherry pie.
Cherry
A
pie.
good cherry pie with a good tartness to it, not
Yeah.
too sweet. Excellent. What's the pie spot we went to again?
Did we go to Dupar's? No. Where did we go? Where?
It was
I don't
out
remember.
in. It was like that. What's that outdoor food mart kind of thing? It's not outdoor. It's like indoor outdoor.
Farmers market.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's Dupar's. Dupar's is legendary for their pies. Boysenberry is very popular. They have cream pies. Blueberry pie is very popular.
And
Some of
remember,
us-
Armando got a key lime pie for
Oh,
Lindsey Vaughn that day. Our friend.
Oh, that's
mutual friend,
right.
Dr.
Yeah.
Armando Gonzalez.
As we're name dropping, yes.
Yes.
Armando.
Yes, that's right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I figured you wanted that story, is why you asked me about pie, but maybe it's just a pie thing with you.
Favorite restaurant in Los Angeles? Do you have one?
My favorite restaurant in Los Angeles is Bestia. Have you been there?
No, I've heard of
district?
it. No, it's downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Is it?
It's
What
very
is it?
good.
Is it
Bunch of-
Italian or what is it?
It's kind of like they have a lot of different small plates, like Mediterranean style. It's very good. And then if I could add another one in Pasadena, which is more close to my home.
Sure.
Union. It's an Italian restaurant. Great pastas, very good. It's called Union, and I recommend anyone to go there. Small spot though, so you gotta.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the spot we went to. We sat at the bar. It's very small, nice pasta, simple red wine.
Yeah,
that's it. Where did you and Kat go?
We were just at a house in Sherman Oaks.
Okay.
No, it's in Encino. It was just a house. Nowhere special.
Last question. Another food question. Oh, wait. Before I do the food question, does LeBron privately know that Jordan is better than him?
I think LeBron wouldn't be LeBron if he thought anyone was better than him. How about that? I think. But
Good answer.
I'll tell you this. I'll ask him. I'll be sure to. I'll do it in front of a lot of people and be like, "Hey, secretly, what are your thoughts? Like, just between us and everyone here."
Last question, food question. One of my favorites because I don't eat a lot of carbs and I dream about these. Top 3 sandwiches of all time, Jimmy Spencer. Oh.
Like sandwiches. I mean, personal favorites, or what I think. Like, if I are we doing like Jordan, LeBron, and Magic Johnson of sandwiches, or am I saying my personal favorites?
I'm saying, I'm not saying a specific place where you get the sandwich. I'm saying a type of sandwich.
Okay.
Like, there's a thing called a ham and cheese sandwich. There's a thing called a club sandwich. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, great. Number 3 is a just straight up turkey on a nice sourdough roll.
Okay.
With lettuce, tomato. I don't do dairy anymore because I'm older now, but jack cheese back in the day.
Okay.
Throw that on there. That's just a really good. Tagliaferri's Deli up in Novato, California, Marin County is the spot to get that. Number 2, I'm going to say a meatball sub.
Okay.
It's a delicious meatball sub. And you could do that without cheese if you wanted. It's better to have it with cheese.
Right.
Meatball sub. And I'm going to go number 1, probably not a popular choice, but it is the number 1 sandwich of my life. What I get about 95% of the time from a good deli. And that's a tuna sandwich on sliced sourdough.
Okay. That's good. I like that. I also like how quick you are because I just asked you the question and you do it in order and you just go. I know you're thinking, but you think quickly. You see the floor, a lot like Nashi. You see the floor, you know what you're doing.
Steve Nash with a microphone. That's what they call me.
I'll just tell you mine quickly. You ever heard of a Reuben?
Oh yeah, of course. It's on rye, right?
Yeah, it's on pumpernickel or marbled rye, toasted. You've got the sauerkraut, pastrami sauerkraut. You can have corned beef, the Great Russian dressing, the cheese. Very decadent. I like.
Could you do it without the rye? I don't like rye bread. Could you do it?
You can do pumpernickel. You can do pumpernickel if you don't like rye.
Okay,
pumpernickel's really good.
I like pumpernickel. I'm not sure.
So chicken salad. I like cold chicken salad with on toasted rye, cheddar cheese, red onions, mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, chicken salad. And the third one is controversial because some people don't like it, but you're in the ballpark. tuna melt. Tuna melt.
Mm.
You ever had a tuna melt instead of a tuna?
I do, but again, the cheese things come back, and so just without the melt of the cheese, I don't know.
When you were a real man and ate
I
dairy,
would love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a tuna melt when you were younger?
I would definitely have a tuna melt when I was younger. Up until about 30 years of age, I would go tuna melt, and I loved it. And I think you mentioned something that I want to call out that a lot of people sleep on. But for any great sandwich, a nice crisp red onion makes the whole sandwich.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether it's tuna
Amen
or
to
chicken
that.
salad or anything.
Amen.
Yes, a burger.
Thank you, sir. That was great. I hope your arm's not sore from holding the mic. No,
this counts as my workout.
Thank you, sir. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Jimmy Spencer. The 49ers are known for holding. Spread the word. Yeah, I'm kidding. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.